If you ask people how the Roman Empire fell, most will talk about sudden barbarian invasions, savage military bands, or nobles who became powerless in their own rule. But history shows that great empires often collapse not from external enemies, but from their own structures, internal, systemic, and financial weaknesses. When talking about the Roman Empire, one of the first things that comes to mind is its strong economic pillar, the silver denarius coin. This currency was not just everyday money, but had become a symbol of imperial power and was considered financial security for the local population, merchants, and soldiers. Behind the denarius stood the state's authority and the trust of the Roman people. Money was not just metal, it was a symbol of confidence. However, as the empire expanded, expenses increased, legions had to be maintained at the borders and in remote provinces, and investment had to be made in major infrastructure projects. Revenues could not keep up with expenditures. Ancient Roman administrators, instead of raising traditional taxes, began to play with the money itself. They gradually reduced the amount of silver in the denarius. An interesting question can be posed here. Why would the state try to solve its problem by simply changing the composition of the coin? The answer is simple. Minting cheaper coins brought an influx of funds to the treasury in the short term, but it destroyed long-term stability. The denarius, made of almost pure silver during Emperor Augustus's reign, had declined to a trace amount of silver by the time of the 3rd century. The coins became lighter, their color faded, and the trust behind them completely weakened. This led to a chain of events. Importantly, inflation now changed the daily lives of the population. Soldiers demanded more money to protect the value of their wages. Merchants, seeing that the coins were no longer as reliable as before, turned to barter. In many provinces, economic connections were lost, and local trade networks operated with difficulty. The government's attempts to implement new and strict regulations, for example, Diocletian's famous Edict on Maximum Prices, further aggravated the economic situation with artificial restrictions, leading to black markets, bribery, and a crisis of trust. In the end, the government withdrew its money from circulation and switched to another source to restore stability, the gold coin, the solidus. But by that time, Rome, especially the western part, had rotted from within and fallen into an unmanageable and weak state. The loss of value of the denarius disabled the state's muscle. The empire could no longer be defended, taxes could not be collected, and economic decline led one after another to social, military, and political crises. This history does not end with Rome alone. The destruction of money, the loss of states and societies, is a scenario that different countries have faced at different times. Germany in the 1920s, under the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles, the government saw the way out in printing marks, resulting in the people losing their savings and wealth, setting the stage for extremism. In Zimbabwe in the early 21st century, the deep devaluation of the currency and even the state's abandonment of its own currency was also a repetition of the same model. What's interesting is that such extreme examples are not necessary. In the modern world, even in countries considered far from collapse, we observe softer forms of the same model. Since the US dollar lost its link to gold reserves in 1971, the concept of fiat money spread, and the erosion of purchasing power began gradually. Although coins and banknotes remained physically the same, their real value continuously decreased over the years. Inflation processes played the role of a hidden tax, and citizens lost their wealth without realizing it. The worst part is that this mechanism now has a more global character than ever before. Rome was just one empire. Today, the devaluation of money affects multiple countries at once, and the consequences can be deeper and more unpredictable. The conclusion is simple. History has proven time and again that undermining the credibility of money and risking economic stability is not just a financial crisis, but a path leading to the downfall of entire societies. If we do not want to go through the lesson that Rome experienced, stable economic policy, transparency, and trust in the state must be the fundamental requirement of our time. Otherwise, history will repeat itself,